at it. Shake it off. Shake it off, Miro. What, like a 3, 2, 1? Rock and roll. 3, 2.
All right, welcome to another episode of Glad to Talk Sports. I'm your host, Miro Gladovic, with the amazing, getting really sports savvy Morgan Barkis. That's your new title, Getting Real Sports Savvy. How you doing today, Morgan?
I am fantastic.
That's good to hear. How was your weekend?
Busy. Gratefully. It was really fun. I had family in town, and my brother's son is 16 and plays in a travel basketball team in the summer, and they come to Chicago each year, so it's really fun for me because I would never do something like that otherwise. And it was very hyped this year because of a team that was playing in Chicago, and I had no idea that this was even happening, that these sports teams got as popular as they were. And not obviously every team, but just to think these high schoolers are running around the country in these traveling teams, and the following is bananas. I mean, screaming, cheering, videoing children, like little kids, teenagers, even adults going bananas over this team. And I've been to professional sports games that weren't even at hype. So it was a really cool experience.
So you had a good fan experience.
Yes. And it was, to be honest, the highlight reel made them look like they were professional basketball players, even though they were high schoolers. And some of them are on their way to play Division I basketball or higher. And so, I mean, it's not that they weren't great. And our team we won the first game on Saturday night, and then we lost by 1 point today. So we actually were in the lead, and at the last moment, the other team shot a 3-pointer, just crazy. And then it was tied at the last second of the game. It went into 1-minute overtime, and they got 2 points, and then we got a free throw, 2 free throws, and one of our guys missed the second free throw because it would have went into overtime again. And all that to say, we thought the second game we were going to get killed, and the fact that it was like an even match the entire time, and there were some people cheering for our team because we were the underdog, if you will. And so I was standing up, I was screaming, I was videoing, I was real time sending videos to my parents who are back in Wisconsin and couldn't be there, and giving them the highlights via text. So it was very engaging.
Yeah, you sent me that video via text, and I was like, damn, these are some good players. And I didn't know like what level they were at, because the video was insane. It looked like a rock video. And
yes, well, they have very good videographers, and I was telling my niece, they have mastered the art of entertainment because they have a chant that is very well known, and everyone does it at the top of their lungs at the same time if the opposing team misses a free throw, and it's not friendly. And it's just what they do.
How does it
and
get?
then
What's the chant?
It's oh shit, weak ass bitch.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yep. And it was funny because there was a woman sitting kind of to this, like, one level down on the bleachers to us off to the left, and she had obviously never heard the chant before. We heard it the night before, so she hears it today, and she starts looking around, and she's like, oh my God. And we're like, yeah, like little kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old, and teenagers, and like I said, adults, everybody just yells this chant when the opposing team misses the free throw.
And how old are this? And this was at your nephew's game, right?
Yes, he's 16.
So these are 16-year-olds, and you're getting these chants on the sidelines from parents and people watching. And
like I said, but it's not nasty. They, like I said,
no, it's not.
No, I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's a bit vulgar for some, I'm sure. And in a way, it's almost playful. Like they have like I said, this other team, they're great, and our team beat them the first game. So it's not that they're unbeatable. It's not like they're untouchable. And they have created, it's sort of like, it takes me back to, God, I can't remember now. It was a podcast or something I listened to where someone did an experiment and wanted to see why sometimes in our society people get a following. It's like, why? What did they do? But they almost create it by creating a buzz. And so as an experiment, this person hired camera people to follow him and catch him going in and out of a store and like crowding him after, and people around like, wow, who is this? And they were taking pictures and wanting selfies with some random person who is nobody to anyone. And because he literally created something, people wanted to be a part of it. And it seemed like this team had a lot of it. The coach has over 1 million followers. He's a videographer and digital creator on his own. And so he has his own following, then created the team and found really great players who are also showmen, yes, on the basketball court. And I mean, the way they interact with the fans, they've literally created an entire dynamic culture vibe. Like I said, the chant, and it's consistent every time. So they've created something that people like, a brand. So if you were to talk to a branding and marketing expert, they have created a brand and they market it very well. And they're consistent with it, because every game I saw them play 3 games in the last 2 days. It was the same. They did the same. Like, it's the way that they purposely have the coach come out last, and it's the big deal. It's right before the game starts. The coach goes out, throws up the ball, and all the players rush it, and one of them dunks it. They do the same thing over. So they literally have created a brand. And so the excitement is, yes, they're really good players, and they're showmen. They have literally created a brand. And like I said, the people were bananas. I mean, the kids, when the game was over last night, even though, oh no, that one game they did win. They won. The way that everyone stormed the floor, and it was like sheer chaos, and they welcomed it, and they were engaging with the fans. So it's just, to be honest, it was like a big love fest. It was just so, it was exciting for everyone. And so, like I said, they are masters at their craft, not just basketball. I was very impressed. And like I said, they're good players in their own right. And It was the brand that they created around themselves that it was undeniable that they built that following by being the showman that they are. So.
And that's the perfect setup and intro for what we're going to discuss today,
Oh,
because
great.
our topic today is going to be the fan, the sports fan, and
Okay.
how nuts fans get and how fiercely loyal just at every level. And obviously you had a dose of that this weekend, and you touched upon brand marketing. I mean, are these fans supporting a brand? Are they just sucked in by the marketing? And that's we're going to have a great guest, Rich Libero, who's a digital marketing specialist, a genius in the field. But I first want to set up just talking about fans as they relate to professional teams, because obviously without the fans there would be no money, no eyeballs, no ticket sales, no jersey sales. And the topic I want to get into today is just accountability and just blind loyalty by fans in really bad teams that have really bad talent, or inept front offices that we've touched upon in the last few weeks. And I'll set this up by saying the American sports fan is unique because we talk about soccer and how big that is in the world, and especially in Europe, but other parts like South America. Now, in the professional soccer world, there is accountability to front offices and to talent on the field. And that comes in the form of promotion and relegation. So, as we've talked about, if you're playing in the English Premier League or the German Bundesliga, and you have a really bad front office, and that translates to really bad recruiting of players, and you end up in the bottom 3, because it's not like American sports where there's all different divisions and there's 4 or 5 teams in a division and nobody gets relegated to the minors. In these leagues, you have anywhere between 18 to 20 to 22 teams all play each other, and all are in the same group, and all are matched up against each other. If you end up in the bottom 3 of these leagues, You then get relegated to the league below you, which is kind of like minor leagues, smaller budgets, smaller, obviously, viewership on TV. That translates into less money for players,
Mhm.
and so there's that accountability in kind of world sports, which we don't have here in the US, because you can be an NFL franchise, like we talked about the Browns, and just have a terrible team for a decade. And then you look at the Dallas Cowboys, who have not been really competitive in 2 decades, and they are not only the most popular sports team in America, they're the most financially viable sports franchise on the planet in terms of their worth.
Sure.
So I want to talk about what makes a fan just blindly loyal to a team, and is that the marketing? Is it something else? Because it's fascinating to me, because when you have these teams in the US that cannot get relegated, I question, as a non-American, why are these people turning up? Why are these people paying? On average, a family of four NFL game tickets and all concessions and everything else, parking, ends up close to $1,000. For an NBA game, it's over $300. Why would you take your family and spend all that money to watch a team that you know is deficient or terrible and will probably lose, and you're going to go battle traffic and spend money and watch these people play and put money in the pockets of these players and inept front office people?
I have a question and a comment. Question is, what about baseball? And I ask because, well, my question was, is it the entire team that gets relegated or players? Because I don't know any other sports, and maybe I am wrong in baseball particularly. I just remember being around players that were like, "Ugh, I got to do this or that, or I'm going to go back to the minors." So
Right,
I knew a player, for instance, many years ago who had to go back to the minors, got pulled back, and then he had to go to the minors again. And
right.
so I'm just wondering, is it then player specific? Whereas, like in Europe for a soccer team, the entire team gets relegated. And then just quickly before I forget, I used to live in Kentucky, which and very near Cincinnati, and the Browns fans were fierce. And they would even joke that they were terrible. And I wonder if it's just that hometown pride thing, that it
Yeah.
doesn't even matter how horrible they are. This is where I'm from. This is my team. And they're garbage and I don't care. I love them anyway. I wonder about that. And there are fair weather fans that,
Yeah.
like, some people will jump on the bandwagon, and some people are quite offended that they're like, "Oh, what? You just like them now because they're winning?" So it's weird because there's are the loyalists,
Yeah.
and then it seems like there are the bandwagon jumpers, if you will, or the fair weather fans, as they're called sometimes. So anyway, those are the two thoughts I had. So can baseball folks be
hmm
taken down versus the entire team, and how does that work in soccer?
Three really great points. And for the record, I'll start with the last thing first.
Okay.
I love fair weather bandwagon fans, because that's accountability. Why am I supporting a team that's not competitive? I don't want to watch it. I don't want to spend my money. I don't want to see it on TV. I got better things to do with my time. I'll watch a rerun of Seinfeld or something. I'd rather do that than watch a really lousy team that I have an affection towards, historically or whatever. The other thing, in American sports, they don't have a promotion relegation system, even when they're supposed to in soccer, because FIFA, the world governing body, normally uh, uh, forces countries to have a promotion relegation, but they actually gave the US Major League Soccer a pass and said, well, you don't have to do it. In every other country, aside from Australia, I think, who have the same kind of exemption, there is no relegation in soccer. Um, so major league as well, if you're the Yankees, you can't play, get relegated to the minor leagues. But what they do is they farm out players that getting developed. So you might sign for the Yankees and play for one of their farm teams in Double A or Triple A, and if you make it to the Yankees and you have a drop in form, then they will send you back to the minor leagues. So there is kind of accountability there in terms of talent and the development structure, but. And the third thing, in Europe, do everybody get relegated? Yes, the front office is now operating in, like, if you get relegated from the English Premier League, you go down to what's called the Championship, and you are now playing against all different teams that are at a second tier level. So you could, it's up to you as whoever's running the team, whether the CEO stays or the GM stays or the coach stays. Generally, what happens is if you're part of a Premier League team or a top Bundesliga team that gets relegated, you'll have a clause in your contract saying, I can tear this crap up because I didn't sign to play in the second division. I'm a Division 1 player. I'm not going to go play Division 2 soccer. So a lot of times what happens is they lose all their talent who walk out their door, and then they've got to go now recruit with a smaller budget and try and make their way back up and beat these other teams that have been sometimes in there for 20 years trying to, get promoted. And what happens a lot of times is if you get dropped down, there's been famous teams like in Italy and Germany, even in the UK, where they get relegated, they get decimated from their player roster, their players all go, the coaches often gets fired. They get relegated again and again and again. So they could end up in Division 3 or 4. And then eventually they go into free fall. Some have just disbanded because they just, kept getting relegated. And so there is that massive accountability in European and world soccer, which the US doesn't have. So that's what made me, want to talk about this today, because that's already onboarded with European soccer. So you can't afford. It doesn't matter if you're Manchester United or Real Madrid. You end up in the bottom three, you're getting relegated. It doesn't matter who you are. So, but we don't have that here in the US.
That makes sense. So even and going back to the baseball thing, you're saying yes, a player can.
Yeah.
They're still not technically relegated. They're
No.
just. You're gonna go
That's a
practice
demotion.
some more.
Basically, that's a demotion.
Okay.
So they still technically may have a major league contract, but because of their form slump or they're not ready, or towards the end of their career, they'll just go to the minor leagues and get farmed out.
Okay.
And here we have our guest, Rich Libero, my friend.
Hey, Rich.
Associate.
I was going to say you're quite the reader, Rich, and then I realized that's a virtual background.
It's a lovely background, Rich.
Rich, you're on mute.
And Rich is on mute.
Hello.
There we go, Rich.
How you guys doing?
Very good.
Very good, and good timing jumping on board as we get into this spirited discussion, discussing how blindly loyal fans are. And I was just conveying to Morgan about, firstly, let's introduce Rich. So welcome, Rich, to Glad to Talk Sports.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
I've known Rich for many years. We've worked together on numerous projects. The guy is one of the most unique individuals I've ever met, and that's, let me speak, Rich, because there's not too many guys, especially in the US, that obviously they're savvy about US sports, and Rich used to commentate on ESPN soccer games and has been in the digital marketing space for NHL and NBC and a lot of big organizations, Women's Tennis Association. But Rich is so savvy that he can talk about all American sports, but then he can switch and talk to you about Australian football, about cricket, about Formula One. I mean, it's just, there is no sport that Rich doesn't know about, and not only just on a superficial level, but in depth.
Rich, what got you into sports, and why do you love it so much?
Man, I grew up in this neighborhood of like sports crazed kids, and we beat each other up every day and played every sport under the sun, and it kind of just became an obsession. My dad didn't really understand it. He's more like an individual sports guy. He's a black belt in karate, was a swimmer, and he was like, I don't understand like why you care about teams and these guys so much, and it's kind of funny because my son now says the same thing to me. He has not followed my roots. He's acted more like my dad as an individual sports person and doesn't really get it. So as I've gotten older, I've kind of questioned it and taken a third-party look at it. But yeah, it was an obsession for a long time as a kid, and then later on as an adult. So.
And how fantastic you could turn it into a career. So
Yeah.
Vero was telling me a little bit about what you've done. It sounds like you've done a lot with your love of sports.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my daughter who's 15 the other day, and we're trying to map out like what she wants to do for her career, and I said to her, look, I'm lazy. I never wanted to work. Like, working in sports was always going to be my way of not working. It wasn't a job, okay? And you find out like later in your teenage years that you're not good enough to be a professional in the sport that you love, but you still want to be in the sport. And yeah, my next route was being a journalist, and I achieved my goal really quick, so I was super happy about that. Yeah, I was blessed, really. But that's because I just was obsessed with it, and I had this innate fear of never wanting to work. So that was it.
Yeah. And how do you know Miro?
Miro and I met through a friend who was trying to launch an Australian rules football project here in St. Petersburg, Florida. So, and we've known each other for at least 11 years now, I would say, right?
Yeah, long time.
Yeah.
It's funny
Yeah.
because we met on through Dean, obviously, and he had a Australian football team in St. Pete Swans, that I joined as a player. So I used to play on the team, and then Rich came on board as the commentator, and then I became his color commentator. And then in one of the games, I left the commentary box, I think at halftime, and went and joined the game. And then I came back up to the commentary box, and Rich is there asking me, I got my jersey on. He's like, so how does it compare being up here to down there? And it was just a hilarious experience.
Yeah. The only time I've seen that is like 24 Hours of Daytona, where they're like, interviewing drivers that have just done a 3-hour stint in a race car. So, yeah. Pretty fun.
So that
So,
was hilarious.
no. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to talk about, Rich, and I'm going to share my experience for me, and you just hit the nail on the head in terms of how I got into the sports business. It was becoming a sports agent to my best friend, because I stopped playing in my mid-20s because I couldn't take it to the next level in terms of my professional status, and so I started helping my friend, and then got him a contract, and then I thought, well, this is my way of staying connected to the game and living vicariously through my players, who I provide opportunities to turn professional for, and so forth. And up till then, I was a fiercely loyal fan that, really stuck with teams even though they sucked, for various different reasons. I loved different soccer teams in Europe, like Manchester United and Hajduk in my parents' native Croatia, and teams in the US like the Lakers. But I knew the time when I transitioned from being a kind of blindly loyal fan to a fair weather fan, a bandwagon fan. And it's when I became a FIFA agent, and then I started getting paid by these clubs like Bayer Leverkusen, and then my loyalty was to them because they're paying me, and I'm part of the team technically, even though I'm not an employee. And I never forget my first experience that drove this home. And I was just explaining to Morgan about how American sports don't have accountability in terms of relegation, whereas in Europe you do have it. So the first team that I placed my best friend in was at Fortuna Düsseldorf, who at the time were in the top Bundesliga in Germany, and it was a couple of weeks left till the end of the season, and they had already been relegated, which means they were going down to the second division. There was, I think, 2 or 3 games left, but they still had to play out that season in the top division. And all their players were announcing going to different clubs because they're free agents now. And I was leaving the Fortuna Düsseldorf stadium with my friend and one of his teammates, who was an Albanian international striker, and he had already announced that he was going to another team for the next season. And we were leaving the players' car park, or getting into the car, and there was a bunch of fans mulling around. And there was one guy, this German guy, who came with his kid, his probably 3-year-old kid in his arm, and he went up to this player and he just exploded. He was like in a fit of rage and calling him names, and going off at him in Germany, saying he's a disgusting this and that, and he's a traitor, and blah blah blah, and all you're interested in is the money, you're set for next year, you got a new contract. And he was spitting and cursing and going, and then the player just looked at him and he was like, how dare you say that to me? And especially like in front of your son. This is the example that you're setting for your son. Like, go take care of your own house and your own business, and don't worry about mine. But it's just an example of how fans lose it, just through their loyalty to their teams. And And that's when I just stepped back and went, I don't know that I'm going to ever be a fan ever again in that capacity.
Yeah. I think at the European level, it's so local. And, if you've been watching the Wrexham reality shows on FX, you see what it means to that community with, Welcome to Wrexham. And it is in many cases, it is as much a civic pride as it is a personal one. And at the end of the day, it cuts to the crux of tribalism. And, people identify that as part of their own identity, as part of their family, as part of their tribe. And they can take it very seriously. It's an identifier in a world where we no longer have tribalism. So it's kind of a modern replacement for that human desire, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. Have you seen Welcome to Wrexham, Morgan?
No, actually, Rich, you saying that, I thought, oh, wow, they actually did a show about this. I wanted you to say more about
Well,
that.
have you heard that? Do you know who owns Wrexham? It's Ryan Reynolds.
Okay, I've heard people chat about it, and
Right.
I've seen some marketing, but yeah, that I didn't put two and two together. No.
So he's actually doing the relegation in reverse. He bought this team when it was like in the 5th division or something, like really low, and they had once been a storied team, and not to the level of Manchester United, but in the higher divisions. And he bought them for, I don't know, $1 million or so, and he's injected, he got a reality show and injected all this money and sponsorship, and they've been promoted. They've been going the other way. So they've been getting promoted every single year, and now if they get promoted again this year, they're going to go to the Championship, which is under the Premier League. So they're 2 promotions away. Yeah, from
4
being
years. Yep.
3.
They've done it in 4 years. There was
Yeah.
the first year they owned it, they just missed promotion, and then the second year they moved up to League 2, went straight up to League 1, and now they'll go straight up to the Championship. They're pretty much assured of going up at this point.
Yeah.
Because they're in second place.
They're the real life Ted Lasso.
Yeah, they are. They are. Well, their manager has done it before with Hull City, so he's not unaccustomed to it. And it's one of the reasons they hired him, because he's kind of been a promotion expert. And but they poured a ton of money into that team, revitalized the stadium, and here was this sort of moribund little Welsh town that is now internationally recognized. You can go on Paramount Plus and watch their matches right now live. So and a lot of that has to do with between Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds and their genius of their marketing and what the show has done for them as a vehicle to build up the capital infrastructure that they need really to grow that team. Because at the end of the day, it's money, and it's going to get the higher they go up, the more money they're going to need, the more difficult it's going to get. So, it's an interesting take on tribalism. But when you look at you talk about Manchester United, formerly one of the biggest clubs in the world, is now in probably a complete staggering collapse, one of the most epic collapses that I've seen in a long time. The current state of the team is probably, and I've been a Manchester United fan since about 76, 77, when I started listening to games on shortwave radio in New York on the BBC. And, you didn't get to watch them much here because the games weren't really on. You had to work hard to watch English matches back in the day, maybe catch an odd FA Cup final or, go to a pub. And when you're, 17 years old, 16 years old, you're not going to many Irish pubs. And so it's hard to follow them, but this is probably one of the worst teams that we've seen since 75 relegation. And you talk about the fanaticism of it, them owned by the Glazer family, who has used them as a personal credit card and a piggy bank and has left them with almost $1 billion in debt. The stadium has completely fallen into disrepair. The club is falling apart. They've been completely lost for at least a decade, although they did win the FA Cup last year, and a bit of a miracle. But they're not what they used to be. The revenues are not what they used to be. And the fans don't realize how much power they have over these teams. The problem is the word fans is short for the word fanatic. And so they cannot stop themselves from their habits. They have a massive case of FOMO, of missing out, A, I don't want to be perceived as a bandwagon fan. B, I don't want to be perceived as disloyal. C, if I leave and they win something, what do? Right? I'll look like a bandwagon fan to my other buddies, right? And then they own the purse strings to these guys, particularly in the soccer world, where you pay for your season ticket, and they covet those season tickets, and they will not give up those season tickets. So the season tickets keep them anchored to the team, and as long as they're getting their money, they don't care at the end of the day, right? So they have this ridiculous campaign, and they've had it for years since the Glazers took over the team. Love United, hate Glazers, and then they show up with their green and gold Newton Heath scarves and their red, white, and black old scarves, and they try to old school it. But they're still showing up to the matches. Yeah. They're still packing Old Trafford. And until you take your wallet away from the owners, you have no hope of fostering any change. There's no political campaign or protests or anything like that is going to get a team owner to change his mind. Nothing. And that's it. I see, there's a couple sports. The NFL, people will never give up the NFL. I think we've seen that. There was the brief kneeling boycott. Goodell played it right up the middle, waited for the storm to blow over because he knew people wouldn't give it up. We've seen more traction on the Bud Light boycott than we did in the NFL boycott. People came right back to it. And I tell people, the NFL could drop puppies and kittens from helicopters at halftime and people would still rationalize a reason to watch the games. I mean, they don't care. They will not give up the NFL. And, it doesn't matter if you're a Cleveland Browns fan who, have never been to a Super Bowl, or a Lions fan who has never been to a Super Bowl, lost 2 games last year and then lose their home playoff game. After having the best record in the NFL, you're just like, I talked to a friend of mine in Detroit. I'm like, I'm not even going to, I'm going to give you a couple days because I would be beside myself right now if I were you. And so there's really, people just won't give it up. I think baseball and hockey and basketball are far more susceptible to team boycotts and attendance issues out of all the 3 North American sports, but the fans have to really be willing to take their money and go home and not show up. It happens. When you look at what happened in Oakland with the Athletics, not a great owner. Clearly, their stadium was one of the worst in the world, if not definitely in all of baseball. Maybe it's just old and beat and infested with rats and everything else. Just a terrible building. It was a building that needed to go away 30 years ago, and they couldn't get their new building for whatever the political reasons were. The mayor that they were negotiating ended up getting arrested for fraud anyway. But the fans protested and they stopped showing up. And then the owner goes, see, we have no fan support here, so why should we stay here? And then he pulls the team and he leaves them. He takes them. They're playing in a minor league stadium in Sacramento for the next 3 years before they don't even know if they're going to go to Vegas. They're trying to get their stadium planned. So that boycott, which actually was in force and fans actually enacted, hurt them. So, you could take your wallet and go home, and sometimes it comes back to bite you in the derriere, So it's an interesting thing being a sports fan. At the end of the day, you are preyed upon for your dollars. That's what it boils down to.
Rich, I have a question about fans, like you were saying about the tribalism, which totally makes sense, where there's just this hometown pride or this sense of belonging and people want to belong. What is your experience or perspective on folks that follow certain players? So there's certain people that love the team because that's where they're from or that's their team, like till the death. Yeah. Or folks that follow certain players and that's why they're huge fans of that team.
Yeah, it's more of a hero worship than anything else. And my wife's from New Orleans. She was a huge Drew Brees fan. He brought them a Super Bowl. And so all you need is a Greek tragedy to know what happens to heroes at the end of the day. It usually doesn't end well, but when the hero's done, what do you got left, right? They're not the team. And I think it's interesting whether you support a long-term brand that is the shell around the players that are inside it and they come and go, they're the ingredients, And then, are you going to be loyal to that, or are you going to be loyal to a guy who is going to switch a couple teams? And, I know a lot of people that kind of followed Joe Montana to Kansas City and became Chiefs fans because of that. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
but it's a finite existence, whereas the team usually is not. It's a longer thing. I feel the hero worship is a little bit slippery or slope psychologically because it's just having a fanaticism for another human. And we're all frail at the end of the day. So,
Can you please explain when Miro told me last week that the Dallas Cowboys are still the most profitable and like worship,
Valuable.
like how?
yeah,
If
yeah.
is that possible?
It's one of the biggest brands in the world. They have one of
It's
the
the
most,
biggest.
yeah, they have one of the
11
most,
billion, 11 billion. It's
yeah,
valued as the most valuable sports team by Forbes in the
yeah,
world.
right. An extremely lucrative building that's packed. It's a money machine. The Dallas Cowboys are world renowned. You can go to China with a Dallas Cowboys hat, and somebody's going to know what team it is, pretty much.
Why is it from a marketing
Yeah.
standpoint or a fan standpoint to explain why? How?
Yeah.
They got coined as America's team, right? And
Mm.
you look at them through the 60s and the 70s, and they were an iconic franchise, battling the Packers in the 60s, and then becoming one of the most dominant franchises in the 70s with like legendary people like Roger Staubach come out of the Naval Academy, which was rare. Becomes a Hall of Fame quarterback, would pull games out of thin air to win. I mean, they became one of the most frustrating teams. You either love them or you hate them, right? The term Hail Mary pass was coined because they would connect on these long bombs and win games in the dying seconds. So they also became sort of autocratic too. Like Tom Landry was the first sort of Moneyball coach, and they did a lot of crazy things on the field, like they put people in motion and they shifted their offensive line and they had the flex defense and they did all these cool things, and they were very analytics oriented at a time when analytics, no one was talking about it. So they became sort of this, legendary, iconic brand. And then Jimmy Johnson also in the 90s, they were dominant in the 90s. So they had like probably 3 windows of dominance across 3 decades, as probably at that time the most successful franchise in the NFL. There's been a couple others like the Niners and the Steelers that have gone on, the Patriots obviously that have gone on. So, but they're not at that status of the Cowboys as the America's team status. So you throw in the cheerleaders who are iconic and Americana. Then the Cowboy theme is Americana too. The name helps, So yeah,
It's funny because, I love the NFL. It's my favorite sport to watch. And, I kind of grew up a 49ers fan, but then, I didn't like New England during the Tom Brady era, but I became a huge Tom Brady fan when he went to Tampa because I was living in Tampa at the time and I just loved him reinventing himself. And but I'll tell you something, and I'm going to sound like a bit of a hypocrite. I will never miss a Cowboys game. Like,
really.
as much as I love NFL, like I have to, I'll record. I have to see all 17 Cowboys games because, and I watch it. It's kind of like reverse fandom. I don't know if you've seen Stephen A. Smith, how he's like the poster boy of the anti-Dallas Cowboys fan. He basically, because they get so hyped and they call themselves America's team, and then like a Greek tragedy, it just unravels in the end, and in the most ridiculous of ways, including like last year when a young Green Bay team went there and just completely destroyed them.
Yeah.
And then, Stephen A will get on Monday morning on his hat, or even that night, he'll go on social media, put on a cowboy hat and light up a cigar and then just, and then just laugh and taunt them. And I mean, it's just phenomenal. And I love watching it because I watch them, because it's run by the Joneses. It's a family business. It's like a convenience store, and they think they know football, and they think they're great GMs, and they're really not. You know what I mean? And then they draft and put all their eggs in one basket all the time. They did with Tony Romo for many years, who I thought he's not going to carry it to the promised land. And now they did it with their current Dak Prescott, and it's just funny to watch them put all their eggs in one basket for the next decade, and you see it's not working, but they're just as hyped, and the fans are still packing the stadium. 100,000 seat stadium, 15,000 of which are not even in the seats. They're in the bars inside the stadium.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's farcical.
yeah. I know, but you need that anti-hero
Yeah.
as part of the narrative, right? And the narrative is a huge component of selling the fans on this. Even if the season is terrible, you're going to peddle hope through the draft and through the offseason, and all the teams do it. I got this prospect, and we got this pick, and we got this new coach, and we're doing all these new things. So you're always peddling hope for season tickets, basically, at the end of the day, to keep those tickets going. And as fans, you want to be optimistic. Like, you want to be supportive of it. It's hard. Like, yeah, you're pessimistic about it, but you don't really want to be a pessimist. You're forced into a pessimism. I don't know. It would be a question, like, for people. Like, you watch the NFL. Are you truly happy at the end of the season with what your team does to you? Right? 2 years ago, I stopped being a Miami Dolphins fan because of the uniforms. Okay? Because the owner will not listen to the fans to restore our rightful traditional look, and he's making it his team. And I'm like, all right, you're not going to listen to your fans. You want to do it your way? Done. I'm not giving you my money. I'm done. Like, I'm a fan. I'm paying for your team. I know you own it, but without me, you're nothing. And so if you're not going to listen to what your fans want on the aesthetics, the players want it, the media wants it, the coaches want it, the front office wants it, the president wants it, he's the only guy on the planet that doesn't want it.
Wait, explain to me. I missed that one. What's going on with the uniforms?
No, they changed the uniforms in 2013. It's a terrible logo. They look like an amateur clown show outfit. And, they were an iconic traditional team. They're the only team to ever go undefeated. They have a Hall of Fame coach, the winningest coach in the history of the game, Don Shula. And, they, by all rights and measures, should be looking like the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers and these guys that never change their uniforms. And people are like, well, they needed an update. I'm like, did the Mona Lisa need an update at the end of the day? Are you putting a nose ring and purple hair and glasses and some tattoos on the Mona Lisa to update it for 2025? No, you're not. It's classic. People got the uniform right in 1970, and they got it right. Just admit it. That's it. It's a classic, right? And stop fooling around with it. But if you're going to fool around with my brand and my team and my tribal emblem, no, I can't accept that. So I stopped being, I stopped watching them. I really did. And it's a difficult, does it mean anything at the end of the day to the team? No. My boycott does absolutely nothing. They roll on. But anyway, one of my friends says to me, come on, man, we got a good team. They're in first place like 2 years ago. We got a good team. You should come back, man. You should come back. And I'm like, I'm never coming back. It's like going back to a divorce, like going back to an abusive wife.
Is it me, or did you lose your your library?
Your background.
Did I lose my book library? Yeah, I probably did.
Your library.
Now you can
Rich,
see the
you
Wizard
did
of
live
Oz, man.
commentary, yeah, for years?
Yeah, well, not for years, but I was a soccer commentator in MLS in '98, doing color commentary, and have done some radio and some TV stuff here and there, and interviews
Okay.
and some shows and stuff like that here and there. Probably should.
I have a
concentrate little
fun
bit more on
question because I'm
broadcasting.
curious. When you're live
the
like that, I
journalism
mean,
route.
things are just happening.
Yeah.
Did anything funny happen that just like
Yeah.
something that sticks out where you're like, I don't know, it just made you laugh or it wasn't how you planned it to be?
Yeah. We were in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, doing a Metro Stars game against then the Dallas Burn, and it was 125 degrees when we landed at DFW earlier in the afternoon. It was 119 at kickoff, and we're way up high, and there was no air conditioning in the booth, and we had the window open. And you're putting on makeup to get on the air, so the makeup's like literally melting off your face. But about halfway through the match, this like locust about 6 inches long comes flying into the booth, and me and my play-by-play partner are just like, what? So we're talking about this thing in the middle of the air, and it's like flying around like in the middle of the game, like this giant bug, and we're just like, we're being attacked by a Texas-sized, in the middle of the thing. We actually managed to get it on camera, so it was pretty funny. My dad commented to me when I got back. He's like, "Why did you put makeup on before you went on the air?" I'm like, "I did. It melted off my face."
What about the guy? The only reason I know this is I listened to a podcast where Will Ferrell was on, and he did the impersonation of a commentator from back in the day, baseball here in Chicago. I don't remember the guy's name, but do you remember anything? He
Yeah.
seemed to be quite a character.
Oh, Harry Carey. Yeah, he's legendary. He would sound a lot of times like he would talk about Budweiser a lot, and so you would see there were some shots of like just dead Budweiser bottles lined up in the broadcast booth window. So he'd be having one, and he was Bill Veeck, who was a legendary sports promoter, talked him into singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" at White Sox games at the time before he moved over to the Cubs. And he would be like, "All right, let's get some runs, and a one, and a two," and he couldn't sing. But the Cubs have kept that tradition where they bring in celebrities, everything, and it doesn't matter if they could sing. It's an awesome tradition. If you like, he'd be like, "I'm a Bud man and a Cubs fan. Well, welcome Joe Schlabatnik, our distributor from Algonquin, Illinois." He would be, he had these like, big glasses. He was legend, one of the greats. His son Skip Carey
Oh.
is a great announcer. Worked on the Braves, works on national
That's
telecast
very
with
cool.
TNT,
Yeah, he always
TS.
sounded
Yeah, he's
slightly
great.
drunk.
He's a great announcer.
It seemed like, but I noticed in
Yes.
at O'Hare Airport, there's one of
Exactly.
those restaurants within the airport that is basically a big shout out to him.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Legend. Absolute legend. You used to be able to watch those games back in the cable days. You had two super stations with WTS out of Atlanta and WGN out of Chicago. And so they were the local channels because they were UHF channels in those cities, but they were on cable TV. You could watch Cub games in New York, and I became an Atlanta Hawks fan because we used to watch the Hawks in high school on TBS in the NBA. So, and that's why there's a lot of Atlanta Braves fans and Cubs fans like all over the place, because there were only a few teams like you could watch from outside your market on cable.
God,
all
isn't
the
that
time, every
bananas?
day.
And nowadays you can get anything from
do you
anywhere at
think?
any time.
I know, and it's kind of commoditized. I feel like I'm like less of a sports fan because of it. I miss just surfing through the grid and randomly finding something. I feel like you got to be like really purposeful, and they've spread the deals across so many platforms that it's really difficult to know what's on where and when.
Yeah.
You know.
And I just want to say, you've provided some really great insight between the tribalism to the marketing to the peddling hope. I love that. And I guess there's, a little bit of all these things that keep pushing fans back to the stadium.
Yep.
A classic example of just inept front office, I think, is the recent Luka Doncic trade from the Dallas Mavericks to the LA Lakers, and we did see fans revolting there somewhat, but they actually put ticket prices up, and then they trade off their biggest star, arguably ever, for next to nothing in exchange for Anthony Davis. Were you surprised by? I mean, yeah, there was a little pushback by the fans, and they were booing the GM the other night when Luka came back to play. To me, something like that would empty stadiums. That's like trading Michael Jordan and getting nothing in return, and then
Yeah.
hiking up, ticket prices. That's when I look at fans, and I want to go to the Dallas's arena and stand at the entrance saying, "What the hell are you doing here? They just raised ticket prices and kicked out your biggest star." Like,
I know.
explain that to me. I mean,
The best thing I could do is come up with a conspiracy theory that the NBA organized it. Because it makes no sense on the basketball level,
yeah,
right?
but
And so what when you don't get the proper explanation, then you get to conspiracy theory level. You just have to go there.
Who's
You
this
have
Luca
to.
guy? Who's
And
this
then there
Luca
were
guy?
other
Because I was working
questionable
out at Planet
trades.
Fitness last week and noticed something. I remember he came in, he seemed emotional. People were giving him hugs, and I thought, who's this guy? So I don't know anything about this story.
Yeah. Yeah, Miro could explain it, knowing
So
that he's
Luka
from his neck of
Doncic
the
is
woods.
a Slovenian superstar basketball player who got drafted by the Dallas Mavericks when he was 18, I think, and he's just become a legend in Dallas, and quite rightly so. He's shattered so many different records, carried the team on his back last year, I think, all the way to the NBA Finals, and then out of nowhere, they just shipped him off. And
Got
I mean, there
nothing.
was some rumblings about potentially, he doesn't take very well care of himself. He likes to drink beer and he gets a little bit, bloated, but, his production hasn't been compromised. But there was no explanation, like Rich says, there was no explanation for the trade. They got a player that's, in his 30s already, that's injury prone. They should have gotten like 5 or 10 draft picks and
Yeah,
players in return. And there was no heads up about it. And then
yeah,
they trade him to one of their biggest rivals in the Lakers. And
yeah.
it just none of it made sense.
The
And
only, the
even
only,
Luca was like, I didn't see this coming.
yeah. The only explanation that seemed plausible was that he was due for a huge contract opportunity based on his length of time with the team. And, whether or not that would have blown out their cap or forced them to do other things. But in my opinion, given his level of one of the top 3 to 5 players in the world, that you don't shop him for a better deal because the contract's going to reset and that new team's not going to owe him that mega deal and they can kind of reset with him. So, why not shop that to the best
Yeah,
possible, but to get the best possible return?
yeah,
That's going to leave your team in better condition for the long run, position it for the future, and treat it as an asset. And I think, unfortunately, that a lot of the teams that are not run very well don't think of player development or acquisition on an asset level. But that's a whole nother conversation. And that's why you have to go to a conspiracy theory because it didn't get shopped, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but yeah, I mean, that just defied all logic and all explanation,
Yeah,
and it still does to this day.
right.
But again, it brings me back to where are the fans in this? Like, why are you going to watch the Dallas Mavericks
At this
minus
point,
Luka Doncic, who
yeah,
he's only like 25 years old? He was going to be your star for the next 10 years and bring in visibility and eyeballs. And like,
yeah,
when I saw, I don't like the Dallas Mavericks, but whenever I saw a Dallas Mavericks game, you can't not watch Luka. He's so dynamic and he's so entertaining, and
hmm
that to me would be like one of the classic, catalysts for emptying stadiums and
yeah.
bankrupting a
I mean,
franchise.
they're going to have to come up with a plan for ticket renewals, for season ticket renewals and ticket sales going into next year, which they will put a narrative together. It's all about that narrative of hope. They'll figure it out. That's one. Two, if you're a season ticket holder, you don't want to give up your season tickets because you might not get them back. You might not get the seats that you want to get back. Three, the money's already in the bank, so you already got your tickets, so you're going to keep going for the rest of the year at least, or give them away. And people are going to be like, "Hey, now I got access to a game that I never had access to." So you actually get new fans in the building because people might be giving their tickets away to fans that wouldn't ordinarily get access to it. So that's an interesting perspective, right? And and then you're just you kind of build rationalizations, right? Like, well, I'll go see the Lakers when they come in, or I'll go see the Celtics when they come in, and they'll build around. I want to go in. I want to see this team because, I want to go see the Hawks because I want to see Trey Young or something, right? It's the only really reason to watch the Hawks. But the so fans have an easy way of rationalizing it, and then of course it's entertainment and a day out, and there's going to be a lot of people that just go because they're not fanatical basketball fans. It's just a day out, right? They want to have a meeting or they want to impress their girlfriend or their buddy gave them tickets or whatever. And before you know it, there's enough butts in the seats, right? And that's kind of how it happens. So you can always segment your fan profiles too. Talking about you're going to have your fanatical people, you're going to have your casuals, you're going to have business people that are there to do business. You're going to have different fan segments in the building, and you can't always assume that every seat that's taken is occupied by a 100% fanatical fan. I mean, I see that on the Major League Soccer level. They're talking about shifting to a calendar that matches the FIFA World Calendar, which would put the bulk of their midseason matches in December, January, February, which for many teams would be absolutely disastrous. And when I look at an MLS team, I think, yeah, there are some hardcore fans that care about the X's and O's and who's on the team and what the score is and winning and losing. But there's a lot of soccer families there that are there with their kids. There's people there who just like soccer and want to see a kick in the park, or you go. It's priced well. You get some good pageantry with all the people down the end with their smoke bombs and their flags and their chants and everything else. You're entertained. Everybody has a good day at the park. It's almost like a minor. I'm not saying that it's a minor league version of the game, but I'm saying it's a minor league model where you have a bunch of people who are in the building under different fan segments, right? And you get maybe stronger fanatical fan segments in football, for instance, American football, than you would say in some of the other sports. Hockey, you would get a high one too. You get fewer casuals at those games. But basketball, you'll get casuals because it's more pop culture thing. Baseball has so much seating inventory, you're going to get a ton of casuals. So it's different for every sport when you think about how they break down in terms of fan segmenting, and that goes into how you prepare your narratives.
Well, honestly, the Luka thing, it goes back to the heroism thing you were talking about. The people love the team whether Luka's there or not. For some people.
Yeah. Well, basketball is a bit different, I think, because it's a very star-driven game, and you can have one player dominate the floor and carry your team every game, unlike other sports. So, I see why people latch onto a specific player in basketball simply because they can just dominate the game, like as a single person, which is amazing. But yeah, I guess if you're 7 foot and you could kind of have your way with a lot of things if you're a big enough dude, right? So.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, look at LeBron.
He has a Ken doll, by the way. He's the first ever. He has a Ken doll. Real life person has a Ken. If I still played Barbies, I'd have one.
Somebody will get a job designing clothes for it. That's the scary thing.
Well, Rich, that was amazing. That you really shared, even for myself, being in sports my whole life and, struggling to gain some perspective on why these people willingly give their money to bad organizations. You've provided a lot of insight and a lot of explanation between the tribalism, between, just the peddling of hope is my favorite one. And, Morgan and I discussed that last week, talking about how crazy people get with the draft. And that's pure peddling of hope right there.
100%. Like no league has a longer hope narrative than the NFL, right? So, and I mean, I was so fanatical. I'm like watching Senior Bowl practices, like worried about like what guys are going to look like in a 4th or 5th round. Like, come on, seriously? Like that was the depth of where I was at. I'm like, this has got to stop. So, yeah.
So the Miami uniform change probably helped you.
It was
relieve of that that connection.
I kind of view it that way. I look at it as more of a lucky circumstance. That was the boot and the pants I needed to decouple myself from that fanaticism. It's been healthy. Yeah, I mean, you got your Sundays free. You wake up Monday morning. You're not depressed. You don't care. You're just like, yeah, like I felt really bad for my Lions friend, like, after all the hope that Detroit, imagine the entire city of Detroit has dreams of going to the Super Bowl, and seriously, you lose at home. Come on. Poor people.
Rich, you've nailed it right at the buzzer. You've decouple. That would be my advice to fans. And when you get frustrated and in the midst of peddling little hope, I think the time has come to decouple.
Actually, Gwyneth Paltrow and her ex made conscious uncoupling like a thing, and people were upset about it. They're like, divorce is never like conscious, or it's like a pleasant thing, and they were touting that they had conscious uncoupling that was very productive. So that's the thing. It's in the zeitgeist, guys.
Oh, let's just not go anywhere further than that.
Yeah, really. On that note, Rich, thanks so much.
Nice to meet you. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate your time.
Morgan, nice meeting you. Miro, thank you for the invite.
All right, cheers. Awesome, Rich.
See you guys.
You could slam that computer. Just kidding.
No, and they didn't walk away.
No, oh God,
a
that
brick
was the
bench.
most hilarious thing. He's like, "All right, guys, see you later."
Yeah.
Oh, I loved when he did that.
That was
Yeah.
the best
And then
exit
he
I've
heard
ever
us
seen.
laughing. He's like, "Oh, I guess I should go." Yeah, sorry, Benj, we can't kick you out. You're gonna have to take yourself.
That's the Sherman. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I
that's
think he's
hilarious.
done that before.
He was
Yeah,
great.
why leave once when you can do it twice?
I liked him.
Yeah, what'd you think? Added some
I thought his
perspective
perspective was
about the whole
great,
fan
and I mean,
the fan experience.
just open-minded, and yet he's definitely stuck in his ways about certain things. I mean, the Miami Dolphins, that is a full body no for him now over these uniforms, and he stuck to his guns. And like you were saying, you would take the wallet out of it, and like he said, it may not make a difference for the team, but for him, it was like an integrity thing, and yeah,
Yeah, it was cathartic.
just uncoupling.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, decoupling. But yeah, I mean, he really did shed, a lot of perspective from my point of view, because like I said, I've not been a proper sports fan for many years, and even when I am, it's like when the game's over and I turn off the TV, it's like I'm not rattled, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But fans out there do lose sleep over it, and their quality is certain, they get certain enjoyment from certain things in life, and a great chunk for many sports fans, what I've seen, like the guy carrying his son and going after one of the players, a great portion, what I've noticed, of their quality of life is tethered to how their team it does, and they live vicariously through that team and their successes or lack thereof.
In therapy
And it's
speak,
fascinating
Miro,
to
that's
watch.
called codependency. When you are literally codependent on someone else and you're
There you
gauging
go.
your feelings off of what's going on for them, that's unhealthy. That's where that conscious uncoupling needs to come into play.
I mean, you guys both nailed it between Rich's decoupling and you identifying the codependency.
Yeah.
What a perfect way to end the segment.
Hey!
Amazing stuff. Well, thanks for tuning in. Another great podcast, I think, with a fascinating guest. And I think you learned a little bit.
I'm feeling
as
very
well,
sports
Morgan.
savvy. I went from a -2 to, I would say I'm at a 1.5.
That's brilliant in just 4 podcasts. Fantastic stuff. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Look forward to hopefully catching you on our next podcast.
Hey, that was great. Good guess,
All right,
Miro.
guess we're out. Yeah.